Okay, so are there any comments or questions anybody would have, any thoughts that someone would like to share? Taya's got the mic ready to go. You don't have to, but I just want to take a moment here in case someone wants to say something. Okay, here we go.
I like what you said about, especially the last comment that you made, that people who tell me the things I don't know, even about myself, I put those ones around.
Yeah.
So, are my best friends and helpers.
Yep.
But I find that sometimes there are people also who only want to make the leader happy instead of helping him.
Right.
And so they work around him as what I call a yes man.
Right.
Everything he says, whether it's right or wrong, is a yes. And they say that because they say their place is to honor the leader, whether he's wrong or right. How would
Right.
what would be the comments you would make on that?
Well, yeah, the comment would be that I would want to train leaders who really get input from the team just as a way of life, and that they would have the maturity and wisdom to be able to receive from the team, from the body, and be corrected so people don't have to honor them when they're wrong. You know what I'm saying? That's the kind of leader to reduce the amount of times that you're wrong. And I think the people that God puts around you can help you in that. There's absolutely a time for, leaders are going to hear from God, and God's going to direct them. They're going to do what God tells them to do, really against who's around them. And that's if you can't take those stands, God doesn't really need you as a leader. At that point, it's a democracy. What do they need you for? We've got this this thing we're doing in our office, Taya, this whole digital document thing that we're just installing. Paul's installing that software this week. It's going to allow us to go paperless at some level in my office. I would say Pastor Taggart really enforced that. I mean, that was the way it's going to be, and I kind of overrode, not violently, but it's just I did not have a whole lot of encouragement from the team to do that. So the honoring the pastor, well, we're going to get into a thing maybe at the third hour of this class, but we're going to talk about that honor, and I don't want to do it right now, but you're leading into it, that the type of communication you have in the table of organization is different than the type of the communication that happens in the body at large, So am I going to honor Pastor Schaller? Absolutely. If he makes a decision that I disagree with, I have a seat at the table. That's just the job I have at the church. I get input into a lot of things. But is my wife ever going to know when I was in disagreement with Pastor Schaller and counsel against it? She's never going to hear that, So I think that's really where the honor comes in. And then I think the other thing you're saying is that right or wrong, I am going to honor. I mean, how would I even know if he was wrong? I might have an opinion. I wouldn't even know that, But I'm going to trust God that in the midst of situations, in the heat of the battle, decisions get made, that God's still going to hold up that pastor. The church is still going to go forward. As a father, I have an opportunity to experience that every day, especially my children are older now, but when I got two children in the house, fighting different points of view, I got to try and sort out who's right and who's wrong. It's impossible. I do not know who hit who first, I will never know that, And to execute justice in those situations is very, very, very difficult to impossible. But I got to know that in spite of me, doing things that are, just making bad decisions, fleshly decisions, I got to know God's holding us all up, and that in turn allows me to give grace to the people over me that are making decisions. But a couple years ago, Pastor Lange went down to this sort of leadership church growth seminar. I don't know if I'm using the right words, in Texas, where this guy named Ed Young was putting on a seminar. Has anyone here ever heard of Ed Young? I never had. He's got a big church down, I think maybe in Dallas or something like that. And Pastor Lange came back just talking about some of the things he learned at that seminar. And what Ed Young says is, I don't want yes men. I want people that can give me advice, tell me when I'm wrong, can give me opposing points of view. And then he said, but I want yes men. I want people who are going to support the leadership when it's time to go forward. So I think, and that's also another part of this course, I think we'll get there. I'm not very good at it, but we really, one of the reasons for this course is that, we feel like we've trained you well in the Word of God, evangelism, soul winning, ministry, life, communication, all those types of things. But this is, what you're hearing in this class, you didn't hear in your other 3.5 years of Bible college. So that's why we're doing this. But we also do not feel, even though we've trained pastors well, we don't believe that we've trained elders well. Like the men who are around that pastor, what is that person's job? And if you were to ask a pastor, well, who corrects you and who disciplines you? Well, my elders do that. I have a board of elders. But is that board of elders really functioning? And I think in some churches it really is, and in some churches maybe it isn't. The pastor really runs the show. The elders are really there to do what he says. So when the crisis comes, there's no tradition or procedure where these guys can really say, wait a minute, Pastor, we got to consider this, because they haven't been trained to do that. So hopefully we'll I think I just said it in a nutshell, but we'll get to another module in this course where we will talk about that. But you might have another comment, Pastor Ben, might be, like, here I am, I'm related to this pastor. Because I'm not secure as a man with God, it's very important to me that I have a relationship with this pastor, and I want him to be promoting me and affirming me. And because of that, I have an unhealthy relationship with the pastor, where whatever he says is wonderful to me, and that's can be very unhealthy. And so it's just like I look at all this stuff. You got two sides to it, and where do we meet? Where's it all come? It comes together at the cross. I don't know. The Holy Spirit has to lead us in situations and really show us the right way. And we may have mentioned it a few classes ago before you were here, or maybe we didn't mention it, but it's like, ultimately, who has spiritual authority? Who's ever speaking God's thoughts has the spiritual authority. Abraham listened to Sarah. So it's like, that's when it gets scary, when the pastor, the guy with the office, the guy with the title and the place in the organization, when he's not speaking from God and somebody else is. That's like a very crucial and important time in the church, like how we handle those situations. Do we recognize it? Are we humble enough to walk through that and get to the other side where God's really, really in charge? And so this is what we need to train us for these moments, because that's when your lives are in jeopardy, because we can get very messed up in these situations. And the life of the church is in jeopardy, because people tend to get angry with each other and do very destructive things in these situations, because they haven't been prepared or trained for them. Which is, hopefully we'll get something. This is not the only leadership. There's Christian leadership courses where I believe some of this is covered, but just structurally we're covering some of that here. Anybody else before we go on from there? Okay.
I just liked when you talked about the rebuking, that we don't want to humiliate people.
Right.
I'm working with kids, and I think in that case also it's so important that we don't want to humiliate a kid,
Right.
but we want to handle the situation, and that we talk one-on-one with them and not in the group when every kid is there,
Right.
and they can talk about it. And yeah, I just really like this point.
Yeah, that's very good. you know, and I was thinking, just because I'm a parent, of course my children are getting up and out at this point, but, you know, I think a small child needs, the correction has to come very quickly after the error, otherwise they don't even get it. You know, their attention span is gone. But once you get, you know, teenagers, and as men, we do not need to react in situations like, what? You know, we don't need to do that, because as soon as we react, all of a sudden, and I think this goes across the board, in the home, on team life, in a place of employment, but when we react, you put yourself in the place of the child, especially the teenager who doesn't think, you know, who's figured out that the parents are not God, you know, they've grown out of that. They know parents are not perfect. They're looking at that, and I react to my child, and the issue just went from the child's behavior, which is where it's supposed to be, to the parent's anger problem, which is where it's not supposed to be. And then the child at that point is just trying to deal with a problem the parent has. You know, like you need anger management. That's how it goes. So it's really important that we really sit in our kind of our throne. I don't know if that's the right word, but our office that we have, and walk in the dignity of the office that God has given us. Because when we step outside of that, it's the law of the jungle at that point. My kids obey me because I'm bigger than they are, and as soon as they're bigger than I am, you know, it's over. You know, I mean, your kids figure out they can run away. Then what are you going to do? You know? I'm sorry, send the microphone over to Shahan there. I know it sounds funny, but it's like this is really, unfortunately, or fortunately, this is real life.
Last week when you were talking about meetings, like long and short meetings, you said something interesting that, you know, I picked up on, and that was, you said when you have a meeting, it's always important to have it long enough to bring up unexpected things,
right,
quote unquote.
Yep.
Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, we mentioned that again today, but I'm just saying that, I mean, I could ask my team to write an agenda. Write down for me all the things that you want to talk about today, okay? And generally, the level that we're operating at, to expect my team members to have that level of discipline might be unrealistic. You know, maybe they think of something during the week, and they just might forget to write it down. So I don't think it's fair. It could be fair. I don't think it's wise to limit the meeting to agenda topics only, because you'll have a teammate, oh, wait a minute, there's something that came to my mind. Is it okay to talk about this? I mean, if you're really out of time, oh, you know, let's write this down for next week. You can certainly do, yeah, write it down and we'll talk about it next week. You know, we've got a little board in my office of meeting topics, so you could do that route, but you have to have that just for people to be happy. I just think I recommend that level of freedom, you know, because otherwise you will miss out on things that would help you and might be edifying and freeing for that person to say. And that's the other thing, you know, the person who says something, 5 other people are thinking it usually, you know, but they're not saying it. So you got to extract that information. So that's how I'm thinking about that, you know, and then just have meetings relaxed enough so you can tell some jokes, have some fun. You know, it can't be all work. People can't live that way, you know. So maybe we'll go on here. How did the song go, Chad? Needs work. Okay, all right. Something I want to recommend, and I'm not sure I'm saying this in the right words, but there's something that I call like the rhythm of, you know, policy, procedure. And what I mean is this, is that you really want to, in terms of how the team is going to operate, you really want team members having input into what that is. And the benefit of that is number one, you get better ideas, but number two, the team will have buy-in. to what's, I know that's sort of a buzzword, buy-in. People will have ownership. People will feel a part of it because they have had a seat at the table when the decision was made. And you're not always going to go with majority rule. Sometimes you as the leader, you're going to say, this is the way it's going to be. And that's your right and responsibility to do that. But generally speaking, and like this next phrase I think can really be helpful to you, is that reasonable people, if we all have the same set of facts in front of us, we're all going to come out at the same conclusion. I know that's a generalization. It's not always going to be true. You can have honest disagreements or maybe dishonest disagreements also. But it's like, this is the facts of the case. What's the best way for us to proceed? What is the best time for us to have a team meeting next week? What's everybody think? What works for you? What works for you? What works for you? And out of that type of deliberative process, when we finally get to a conclusion, everyone's looking each other in the eye and saying, you know what, we just made a good, common sense decision here. So it's not my decision. It's not Chad getting his way. It's not Wesley getting run over in a conversation. It was just like we put it on the table, we did the best we could, and now we go forward. And this was a team decision that we made. And as many team decisions like that you can have that are ruling your organization, it's just you're going to come out way ahead because people are going to be happy in that because they will know we did the right thing here. I realize I might have got the short end of the stick, but I realized for the team it was the best decision, and I'm happy with that because I'm a team player. Okay? What I'm unhappy with is situations where my input is not considered or it's squelched, and at that point, what do? I've been shut down. What is my venue here? Where is my voice in this thing? And then that leads right back into, am I valued as a person? And then the next one is, does God even want me here? It goes that way very quickly, at least with me. I mean, I can go into a depression in moments, and I'm in some meetings with Pastor Schaller, and sometimes I don't get my way, and it doesn't go right, and it's like I have to walk through that, and this is like the pastor of the church, making decisions that are his to make, but it can bother me for moments, and we all need to grow up and grow out of that. But so where was I going with that? I was talking about a rhythm of policy and procedure, and what I mean by the rhythm of it is we come together, we decide this is the way we're going to do it, okay? And we're going to do it this way until we have a chance to talk about it again as a team, okay? If it's not working in the heat of the battle, I'm not going to rebuke somebody. If I'm a team member and it's not working in the heat of the battle, I'm not going to say, oh, that Pastor Taggart's a jerk. What are we doing this for? I'm going to get through it, but that nobody has the right or even the desire to on the fly. Of course, in an emergency, you can do whatever you got to do in an emergency, but on the fly to start changing things that we all agreed on together as a team was the right thing to do. Instead, we are going to do the experiment together for 7 days or whatever it is, and then everybody in the midst of the experiment knows that they can come back at the next team meeting and say, hey, can we modify? I propose we modify what we agreed we would do together last week. I'm having this problem with it. Can we make this change? Okay? And so you come together, you agree what you're going to do. Maybe you write it down, maybe you don't. Tell you in the finance office, I've tried to get other people to record stuff. It doesn't work very well, and I get sick of doing it myself. So we're not writing down as much stuff as I wish we were. But maybe I don't feel bad about it. But I'm just telling you, this is just like life. Sometimes things go perfect, and sometimes they don't. But maybe you write it down, and then like I say, a week later, how's this thing working? What are we thinking about this? Did this work? I saw that this happened, and someone say, no, I hated that. Oh no, this is great. I hate it. I love it. Okay, what do you hate about? What do you love about it? And again, we're back in the safe place where we can have these conversations where everyone's going to get their say, and we're going to make a common sense team decision. and no one's going to get run over in this thing because everybody is very, very important. And you start to like to develop this momentum, and people will actually start to trust the system. You know, people will start to trust it, you know, because they know they've got to say, and they won't have to do some of the crazy things that we all can do because we're unhappy with something. You know, if I don't like the system and I have no voice in it, what am I going to become? I'm going to become like a revolutionary. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to engage in sabotage. You know, I'll go to my friend Lisa and say, hey, you know what? That's what they said. You know, that's what Pastor Taggart said or whatever, but we're going to do it this way, okay? And those guys don't have to know about it, you know? And the reason people do that, and I think we've probably all done it in this room, haven't we? You know? I think we have, you know, and the reason why we do it is because either we're just wicked in our hearts or because there is no venue or no place where my input is going to be received and get a fair hearing. I'm not being covered. No one will talk to me. I go to my Heavenly Father. He listens every single time. Answer is yes, no, or wait, right? At least I just trust Him. But the guy I'm working for, I don't even know if he's for me. I don't even know what I'm doing here. You know? Is he here to keep me down or something? Is he against me? How come I have to run around behind his back to even make this place work? And it's because that guy is insecure. He doesn't want to hear things that might be uncomfortable for him, and he doesn't want to hear things that are uncomfortable for his flesh. So he's going to have to make a change that's going to require him to be spiritual, okay? And Adam does not want to do that. So we build these walls around us, and that's what again, you guys have been in the workplace. You know what I'm talking about, because this is how companies live day in and day out. You know? Don't let the boss know. Oh my gosh, don't do that, you know? And the best, highest paying job I ever had, going back, whatever it was, 1995-ish. I was up, well, I'll just tell you, I was speaking to the young men, not to get fed up with God's timetable for you. I was fed up with God's timetable. We had a certain pastor in the church at the time, no one, any of you know, most likely, it was just like, it was like where there was no vision, the people perish, you know. So there I was in the church, I was like, an energetic guy, I was doing things, but I didn't see like my life was going anywhere, you know, and I lost a job that I had, and I got angry with God. It's like, and I'm not saying right or wrong, but it was like, okay, God, next time I work for somebody, I'm going to get paid for it, you know, that's what I'm going to do. And so I got newspapers from Albany, from Pittsfield, from Hartford, Connecticut. I lived in the Berkshires. I was willing to commute. Some of you know those areas, some of you don't. And I sent out resumes. I got newspaper subscriptions, so I was sending these resumes out. And there was this job in Springfield that 200 people had applied for this job. And they offered the job to one lady. She didn't take it. I was the second. I got offered this job, you know. And the job that I had left, where I had been, fired, among many jobs I've been fired from in my life. And it's like, so 6 months later, I had increased my income by 50% and had health insurance on top of that from the company. It was like amazing. I was like, I couldn't believe it, you know. And I was like, commuting and had an office and all this stuff, and they had a 401k plan. Don't get me going on that. But it's like, oh my gosh, this is how people live in the world. It's like, we had these weekly staff meetings, and they were beat-up meetings where the boss would go in, sit at the head of the table, and he'd yell at people for not doing their job. He'd swear at people for not doing their jobs. Like every word you've ever used, and some you haven't. It's like he would, and that was like, how is this? I mean, this is how people live? I got to go in and listen to this and work in this company? This is like unbelievable that people live this way, and then God delivered me a couple years later. But I'm just saying that's not how the church. That is not how the church is going to administrate. Is going to run its affairs. It's not going to work that way. We're going to work a different way, and we're going to work God's way. And again, there's room here. I'm painting one picture, and it's not like right or wrong. There's like a continuum. and there's poles there. One could be like way over in this, and we'll talk about some of those spectra in a few courses from now. But I'm not sure. Oh, but anyway, okay. I'm just back to where I was. Is that we have what I say a rhythm of policy and procedure, and over time you just build up that your organization is operating a certain way in all these different areas, and it works, and people are happy with it, and it's flexible. You can always change it. That's what we got meetings for. We're not trying to, you know this, you folks. All we're doing is managing change. There is no stability, especially in a church. We got 6 billion people in the world to win to Christ. We're always going forward. There's always new ideas and new initiatives. So you're not trying to stabilize it. You're just trying to manage, to respond to the needs that are there in a way that you can handle, according to your ability and your capability. There's some things you can't handle. Pastor, I cannot take this on. My department is we're doing all we can. I'm doing all I can. If we make this change, we could do it. Do you really want to make that change? But that's what we're doing. Is we're managing change, and we're doing it by having a mechanism and a way of operating that allows us to make changes. Not that is designed to keep things just one way, but allows us to go forward and be flexible. And when you're living this way, people are happier. People are alive. I know it can be challenging, and you might get a conservative person, or someone who doesn't want change. But if you make the change as comfortable as you can, it's awesome. And we like come alive in this environment. It's fun to work there. I'm growing. I'm not stuck doing what I'm doing for the rest of my life. People appreciate me. I'm making a difference. I'm contributing to where the organization is going. And now I've got purpose and value in my life. And this is how I want to be living. That's exactly why I got saved. That's exactly why I got saved, because I wanted to have purpose and value in my life. And I did not have that. And someone came to me and told, I didn't want to go to hell. That was part of it also. But it's like someone brings the gospel to me. Great, I'm saved. But it's really when Pastor Stevens, I was probably 15, 16, he's preaching, going into all the world, not somebody else but us. It's like, oh, this is great. I can have a place in God's plan. It's like I never heard this before. I'd been in churches where ultimately be a good person. Come to church, be a good person. And that was it. I didn't see any room for growth. And I did not want to become like the people who were like important people in the church, because they were walking around like they were important and better. I did not want to be that. Okay? So this, if like I say, if you get into this rhythm, what are we going to do? Did we do it? Yes, we did it. Did it work? No, we didn't do it. Why didn't we do it? How can we fix it? This will change your lives. You've seen it, Taya. We're putting in that this document management thing, and we had the conversation last night how we're going to do the check stubs. Remember that? Right now we're stapling them to the invoice in a digital system. Do we need that? What do we do? And we haven't answered the question yet. But people on the team, I hadn't thought about it. People on the team brought it up, and we're gonna see what that is. It's a real problem. Not like a problem that's going to stop us, but it's really something that we need to consider and think about and come up with the right answer for. And the team told us that, and you're absolutely right. I don't know what to do. You tell me. Let's find out. Okay? Now, so that's like I'm not saying the full thought, but it's a long thought on the long meeting. Okay? It's like I really want you to. And again, how am I going to evaluate you on this? It's going to be like, I'm not going to do like multiple guess, fill in the blank answers. It's going to be like, tell me, about conduct of meetings. Why do you have a meeting? How do you do it? What's behind that? I want you to be able to discuss that. Okay, so you should be meditating on all these, I'm sorry for the word lectures, whatever you call them. You should be meditating it, pondering on it. Any of you could write the exam. We know what the questions are going to be, right? It's just like, tell me how to run a meeting, What's the table of organization? Why do you have bylaws? We just, everything we've been talking about. But I'll start putting these exam questions up on the website when I get to it. I'm a little bit behind on keeping the website up, but I'll start putting these up. You'll know what's coming. It's in your lecture notes. Pastor Ben, I know you started late. You got 16 people here who will help you, okay? if you ask, and you might want to compare notes also, because one of you might, Wesley, you might have something in your notes that Amanda doesn't have, and vice versa, and you can help each other with this stuff. I don't know who the best note taker in the class is. You can, Jamie and Amanda, they're clicking away over it. You can sell your notes, okay, in the bookstore. But there will be a midterm and there will be a final. I'm telling you that the midterm and final are going to be, those two things are going to be a large percentage of your grade. And I will ask you to reproduce from memory this material. But hopefully, because you're meditating on it, it'll be part of you. It won't be a bunch of memorization, but it'll be more like life, because it is common sense once you hear it. Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm sorry, microphone. Sorry, we've just got a question from the audience here.
I was thinking about this as you were speaking, and it was taking into consideration staff meetings in a church context, like just going over affairs of the church. Is pressure a normal thing when the onus is on you to make a decision? Is pressure a normal thing, especially dealing with situations in a church context?
When you
is it healthy? Is it unhealthy?
Let me just think for a second here. So I'm in a church. I have some measure of responsibility, like some delegation. Oh, okay. So as the meeting leader, is there pressure on me to make a decision?
Yeah, is it healthy, unhealthy? Is it a good thing? Because, obviously when you take it outside the church context, pressure is a normal thing making a decision when the onus is on you, but when you're inside the church context.
I'm going to hold off on answering that question. I'd never thought of it that way. And I'd just be shooting from the hip on it. But maybe we can bring that up again, and maybe someone else has we can ponder that. But I like the question. I think it's a good question for this course. I just don't have a thought on it right now. I don't have a lecture on that. So please if we don't bring that up again, please ask that question again. Okay. That was the long meeting. In my opinion, you have a long meeting weekly. That's not written in the Bible. But, you're going to make your own decisions about how you want to run your organizations. But just in terms of how my brain works and how I perceive others working, and the amount of how long can you go before you hear edification, before you start to lose it. So we're in church 3 times a week. We probably pray every day. How long can your team last without hearing from you what sort of problems or things are happening to them, and how long can it go? So that's why I'm in favor of a week, but I'm not saying that has to be that way. But I believe in the long meeting, but there's something also I call the short meeting, and I don't have a lot to say about it, but the short meeting is simply human contact. So everyone knows they're okay. Like every meeting is like we love each other and remember why we're doing this. It's just human contact that we need as men and women. So you just don't spend your whole day working. What I'm saying? It's like, those of us who are married, you're walking out the door in the morning, your wife says, "Hey, aren't you supposed to give me a kiss?" You're right, I am. And your wife needs that kiss. She doesn't, because it's just life. And your team needs that, like smiling at each other, "Hey, we love each other." And that's what the short meeting really is. When I was in, the one time I was in Budapest, I just gave a similar talk, and some Finnish guy said, "Oh yeah," and I called it like a huddle, like in a football game. I'm saying you have a huddle, and then you call the play, and then you go out. And he says, "Yes, in my company, we call that a coffee break." So you just, whatever it is, you just need that time. There have been times when I had a daily short meeting in my office. I'm not for that. I'm not against it. Right now, we basically do it. We have our long meeting on Thursday. Monday morning, we come in. It's up, as long as it goes. But if all we do is get together and pray, and hey, it's great to be here, an awesome message last night. Again, it's just so people know they're people and not machines. But just, in my office, for someone to come in at 8 in the morning and, work till 4 or 5 like they do. I just don't know how you do it, And, if I don't have that meeting in the morning, people are going to stop and talk anyway, But it'll be like illicit activity. So we may as well, you may as well plan it otherwise, because they need it. They're going to get it somehow. So you may as well give it to them. And of course, as believers, just to pray and have God cover the day, is like very important. But we work very hard in my office. So that's the short meeting. I recommend it. And then we're going to spend time on the personal meeting. And this is the one-on-one meeting I would have with people on my team. And this, in some ways, is very similar to the long meeting, and in some ways it's very, very different. And a few weeks ago I quoted Charlie Tremendous Jones, and I have one more quote from him, and he says this, that anybody can preach to 1,000 people, but it takes a lifetime to learn to talk to one person, And the purpose of the personal meeting is to give the people on the staff, on the team, in the family, whatever it is, that personal time so we can talk about like very, very important things that are not going to happen in the context of a team meeting. And why that would be, it might be just, discomfort about revealing personal things. There may be things with other team members, or just that team member just may have things that they just don't want to talk about in public, but desperately they need to talk to somebody about. So this is really the meeting where we talk about like very important things. And I don't have it with me, but you could probably make it up out of your own mind. Like, what are important things? Well, are you happy? Okay. Are you happy with my leadership? Is this job going the way you expected it to go? Do you feel like you're a success on this job, or do you feel like you're a failure? Is there some way you'd like us to change your job would you like us to, do you really think you ought to be doing something else? All this type of stuff. Like, do you like this church? I mean, and this is like these are like the issues of life. And, you could go overboard in this direction. You don't want to be eliciting, flesh out of people, because, you get me in a bad mood and I can tell you my life is awful. So there's a balance to this, but it's just, you don't want to let a person be going 1 and 2 and 5 years in a job that they live with because of, like what you were saying, Pastor Ben, they think that this is where the church has put me, to honor the church. I got to continue this. I got to suffer in this. God will give me grace. Well, maybe God isn't giving them grace, and so a person can really end up in a very, very bad place. And it's my job as the leader to make sure that does not happen, if at all possible. I'm going to make a statement. It's a generalization. It could offend people here. But when I, really came onto the staff here probably 12 years ago, and then I had a sense that there were a number of people on the staff that were, in a sense, just caught in a rut, that their relationship with God was really limited to their staff job. Pastor Stevens always had a policy that staff members go soul winning, but a lot of people weren't doing that. Staff members are going to be in 3 services a week. Some people were not doing that. And I just felt like their lives, instead of their job on staff making their lives bigger, for whatever reason, it had made their jobs smaller, or their lives smaller, because they had stopped. Instead, they found a place of comfortability instead of a place of growth, and because it was on staff under Pastor Stevens, there was just no progress going on in their lives. I know I'm saying that in public. I could be wrong in that judgment, but I think maybe I'm not, and that's why you want to be meeting with your team members one-on-one, and you might do it once a year, once every 6 months in different contexts with different levels of intensity, but it's really to be covering people, to be helping them go forward in their lives. And I would say that that meeting is probably the most difficult meeting to hold, and that's one reason why I don't hold a lot of them, because it's not like the easiest meeting to hold, but it's because of what I'm saying, because now I don't have, like, for one thing, when I'm more comfortable in a group because I feel like I'm covered in a group in some sense. Like if I go overboard, maybe another group member can jump in and balance me, but if I'm just talking to one person, it's like almost more accountability, responsibility than I want, because it's like just me and God and that person. Lord, don't let me go off the deep end here. But then the other thing is maybe the person is not talkative. Maybe this person, and I don't have other. I got 17 people in this class. If I call on one person, they don't want to talk, no problem. We go into somebody else, and we just go over it. But if I'm in a room alone with somebody, and I ask them a question they don't want to answer, it's like hard to get out of it. I'm just telling you, this is just how my brain works and why these meetings can be interesting. But I think you're prepared before God. We're praying for the individual. Again, I can hear anything, but we ask the questions. How are things going? And because I'm secure, I can take any answer. A reason why we wouldn't ask the questions, we don't want to. Are you happy with my leadership? You want to ask that question of your team members? That's like a scary question. And then the other thing included, so you're finding out from them where are you at, what's going on, and then also there is a place for real, objective evaluation of what's happening. You know what I'm saying? And you got to do that with great wisdom, because my next door neighbor, we used to, as a child, always tell the truth, but don't always be telling it. Okay, you could give someone an objective valuation that would destroy them because they just can't handle it. So you got to be wise with it. But it's like, so and so, you've been on this team for 3 years. I know that you're wanting to have a larger role on this team. I want you to take on that role, and I'm going to step aside, or I want, so you can have my job, or I think you should leave my team because I'm going to keep on doing what I'm doing, but you ought to have your own team. Go talk to Pastor Cooper, and I'm going to recommend you to do that. Or the other side of it is, and I've got people like this, just without going too much into it, sir, madam, sir, I think that your gift is, from what I've observed in your life, you have a gift with the elderly, and I want you to get involved with nursing home ministry, And in some cases, it's just because the person is a little bit eccentric, and I know that the people that they want to be ministering to just can't receive them. You know what I'm saying? Jamie, I think you probably see it in youth ministry. Sometimes people show up, they want to do youth ministry, but the kids can't receive from that person, I think you're one of those people. No, totally kidding. No, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, what do we do with this person? They keep showing up. They want to, and it's like, and you just got to, so sometimes that type of objective communication is just very, very necessary and very important for the person's growth, And if you're saying it like before God, like I could be wrong in this also, And that's why I'm very careful about giving. I got, my older daughter's out on her own right now. She's self-supporting, making her own decisions. But it's like I've just been wrong multiple times giving her advice. I've just seen her make decisions that I was against. I've seen God back her up. So you got to be careful with this. People used to talk about Pastor Stevens, running people's lives. I could never get him to tell me what to do. That was my experience. Pastor, what should I do? I don't know. We'll pray about it. That was my experience with Pastor Stevens. So that is the personal meeting. But like with all these meetings, but especially the personal one, it's like we got to talk about fearlessly talk about the most important things. Find out what's going on with that person, and that will tend towards you allowing you to put that person on the team in a place that is most appropriate for them. And you will have wrong impressions about what that person is thinking. And because people change, well, you told me you only wanted to be working 15 hours a week. Yeah, Pastor Taggart, that was 3 years ago I said that. My situation has changed since then, And I'm not a mind. I wouldn't know that unless I asked. So you got to ask that person, And yes, sir. Okay, go with the mic over to.
is that something that you say like, okay, today I'm gonna have a personal meeting with everyone on the team, or is it like, I'm discerning something's up with this person, maybe I should take time and meet with them?
I think both. Out in the world, not in the bad sense, but just in industry, an annual review is common. Someone gets reviewed annually, sit down and talk about what's going right, what's going wrong, are you going to get a raise, all that type of stuff. I think that discipline could be very useful. I think generally the context you're going to be operating in, just as leaders of small teams, I don't think that's going to be useful to you. I think that you're just going to need to have in your mind, be thinking about people. But maybe, at least when was the last time I talked to this person? Have a standard in your mind, like I got at least once a year I got to talk to people. But then also as you're discerning things, I'm saying like if you see something in a team meeting, you pick something up, like someone snapped at somebody else, like that's a little bit out of character for that person. Let some days go by and then pull them aside. And so that's like the discerning thing you were talking about, like be very important. And 4 days ago, this person snapped at that person. Hey, I want to talk to you about that. What went on with that? Usually, that type of conversation will be a huge relief to the person you're talking to, because they know they snapped. They're feeling bad about it. They're glad just to get it out, so they know they're okay. Until then, they're carrying it around. And then there was probably, even though maybe they fleshed out, maybe they shouldn't have spoken that way to that person, there was something behind it, that statement that was very real, that this person needs to be talking about. Oh, something's going on at home, it came out here, I'm annoyed with the interactions with this person, and it finally came out, that type of stuff. So I think both is the answer to your question. Okay, we're going to stop there and take another break. Oh, yeah, go right ahead.
Can I get one question?
Yeah, we'll go. Yeah, it's fine.
So, I remember what you said when you started this part about meetings, that it all comes through the means of communication, that what would want to be accomplished. There's obviously a big problem with communication. When it comes to the disconnect in the business, whatever it is, or in the church. So, what about? And you also said that the individuals need the three things, right? So let's say that's the situation, they're not getting it, then, and you already said that the response of the individual ends up being, I lack vision, motivation, and incentive, And so what would you encourage that individual to do in that situation? Because maybe there is such a bad disconnect that how are you going to ask me to reestablish the connection as an employee, or
Right.
would that be something that I would be leading myself in and getting from God to do what I just need to do, or am I just going to say I'm going to give you my $10 an hour worth?
Yeah, yeah. So so you're talking about the context of like an employment situation, where the person is clocking in for $10 an hour and they're not, from the point of view of management, again, I've just taken us out of the church situation. I've got a business and an employee. If I have a guy who's not happy, when it's obvious and he's just working for the $10 an hour, I personally, I know that, in the world, getting fired is the worst thing in the world. It's like a very traumatic event for people. I understand that. But I haven't been fired in a long time, so maybe I should be, so I can reestablish reality. But I've sort of been on the other side of it for a long time now. But from the seat I sit in, I always look at it is that we are moving this person on to the next phase of their life. Let's get him, even though it would be painful for him, why am I going to leave him in a situation that obviously is not working for him? Let's cut the cord and let's have him go out and find another venue. But then even like in the church, he's going to grab that mic back. Even if the person's on my team, and he's not being paid, but he's on my outreach and it ain't working, it's like, hey, let's find some other place for you to serve,
I'm not saying so.
Okay, so I missed the question. Sorry about that.
So I'm not saying so much that you're fired. It's more that I quit.
What would I say to?
Meaning, like, you're saying that the boss is saying I have a problem with an employee. I'm saying more like the employee has a problem with the boss.
Okay,
And the
so
disconnect.
I have a problem with the boss.
Right.
Okay.
So now what would you tell the employee?
Okay,
As a counsel.
I'm sorry. Okay, I get it. I would say but you can go two ways. Number one, sit down with the boss and tell him what you're thinking, you know, or it's time to find another venue. You know what I mean? Why stay in a place that isn't working for you? Usually, I mean, for an employee to change his boss, you know, I don't know if that happens very often. Like when I go into a retail store or something, and I get like lousy customer service, I can go complain to the boss, but I'm saying to myself, the boss is the problem. Why would I go? You know what I'm saying? It's like, why would I go get this employee in trouble when he's the one, you know, who has that problem? So that's what I would say. And that's another, I mean, again, we'll talk about this again in this course, but you put that in the context of the church, and what, like a very interesting but sometimes painful lesson to learn is that, like, not, I mean, we got, I don't know, there's 400 Greater Grace pastors out there or something, but being on one team is not the same as being on another team, you know. So you know Pastor so-and-so, he's your friend, you feel called there, you get there, you're operating on his team, and it's not working well, you know, you are free to go. And not negatively, but don't hyper-spiritualize it like I'm off or what's wrong or he's off or any of that stuff. Maybe it's just a mismatch. And again, we're going to talk about this a lot, you know, a little bit further down the road, but just realizing different management styles, different temperaments, different emphases, and you got to learn who you are, and it takes decades to learn who you really are, what circumstances you work well in, and get yourself into a situation where you can function well, you know? Functioning well, you know, in Baltimore is better than not functioning well on some glamorous mission field, you know. So that's how I think about that. Plenty of bosses out there, plenty of people to work for that need your help, you know, as opposed to the guy who doesn't really want your help. Okay, let's break here and we'll come back at 8:25.